Base pair maximization is kind of a greedy approach, so where it tries to get the maximum base pairs, so that's why we call it as a base pair maximization. It is implemented in a very famous algorithm. We call it as Nasinov algorithm, named on Russian scientist Nasinov. It's a recursive algorithm that finds best structure for small subsequences, and once it gets those subsequences, then it moves outwards to take all the remaining nucleotides and make up some big structures out of it. We know that there are 4 possible ways of getting the best structure for subsequences I and j from the best structures of the smaller subsequences. So what we do over here, we can do very first time is we can have a situation where we can add an unpaired position I onto the best structure for subsequence I plus 1 and j. So we have this whole sequence. We start with 2 loops or 2 pointers. So I goes, for example, this way, whereas j goes this way. So j is actually goes in a descending fashion. So if this is j, this one is j minus 1, and so on. So in I keeps on incrementing into I plus, and then here is I plus 1, here is I plus 2, and so on. So right now we are taking, for example, in this case, we try to align this I, or we try to pair them up, but we found that it does not pair. So we let it unpaired, and now we are trying to pair I plus 1 with j. It's kind of, we are adding this unpaired position I into the best structure. So in second scenario, we can add an unpaired position j onto the best structure I and j minus 1. A third scenario is we can add I and j pair. So I and j are actually paired, and the structure I plus 1 and j minus 1, they are already there. So we put this pair into that. Whereas in another scenario, we can combine 2 optimal structures where one structure is I through k and the other structure is k plus 1 through j. So that is where we can have a bifurcation. So we can take that sequence, and in that we actually detected 2 structures. So they are kind of combining 2 optimal structures, or there is we can, in other way around, we can call it as a bifurcation. Here we see all these cases again, where case 1 is I and j are paired. In case 2, I stays unpaired, j is unpaired in 3, and bifurcation is our case 4. We can see these interactions down there in this diagram, and all these 4 cases are down there in the algorithm. So we can come up with a situation which is our case 1 is si plus 1 j minus 1, that is the score of this one, plus weight of I and j. If they pair up with one another, obviously we will have higher score or more weight. The other situation is we can derive our score from I plus 1 and j. So in that case, we will have this case 2, where I stays as unpaired. The same way the other 2 cases, bifurcation and where j is unpaired, they are also in your equations. This is how we look into this algorithm in more detail. You can see these, how these are working. So the idea in base pair maximization is we can find a structure where we can have maximum number of bases paired with one another, and this has been implemented in the algorithm, which is a dynamic programming algorithm. We call it as Nasinov algorithm.